What's up, everybody? This is Jim Jones from ClimateViewer.com, and I've been telling you for years that the global Illuminati is out to kill you. Today, we're going to prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt. Just kidding. I'm Jim Lee, and we're going to really just cut the mustard here. Let's get to the bottom of this. Are they trying to kill you? And by they, do I mean the technocrats, the global elites? Do they know and do they have a plan to kill you? Well, unlike other channels who say unalive on YouTube, I'm going to say kill a whole lot in this video because, yeah, they know that geoengineering will kill people. Yes, they recognize that geoengineering will kill people. But guess what? They're more afraid, allegedly, more afraid of global warming than they are of intentionally killing people. So get out your Georgia Guidestones, pull up your favorite, video of some talking head billionaire talking, about how there's too many people on the planet. We're going to get into that today. But if you're watching this anywhere else, come over to youtube.com/ClimateViewer and hit that subscribe button. If you like the content, gently smush that like button ever so slightly. And if you're feeling especially froggy, head over to connect.climateviewer.com and support the channel. Patreon, PayPal, Cash App, whatever floats your boat. Or you can head over and become a paying subscriber on climateviewer.substack.com. I'm doing all my new articles there. It's just easier for me to write them there. And it also doubles as an email newsletter. So I'm killing two birds with one stone here. I had an email newsletter for a long time. I really never used it. Why? Because I hated MailChimp. Also, they wanted to charge me a whole bunch of money to send freaking emails. So far, this solves both problems. That being said, a short little bit of news before we get directly into the article. So, I did have some of you who've been following know about Forecast the film. And we're working on this. We've been doing private screenings of the film. So it turns out during the January private screening of the film, some prick took it upon themselves to do a screen capture and record the entire thing and put it up on two different channels on BitChute. Now, if you're watching, you're a very naughty person. I have the email list of everybody that's there, and I'm going to look through it. And this will be dealt with. But to say the least, Paula, the director of the film, is wary of doing any other public screenings because we cannot control what we can't control, like morons who decide to screen capture and then post something that's completely supposed to be private. Nonetheless, if you want to go to one more screening, if you haven't been able to see the film so far, we're going to be doing another one on February 28th. Go to climateviewer.com/forecast the film. That's FORECAST the film / so just climateviewer.com/forecast the film, and you can sign up for the Zoom meeting. You can be a part of it. You can see the what we've got together so far, and shortly thereafter we'll do a question and answer session at the end. Last time we had almost 120 people in the private screening, which was pretty good. But this is all about, bringing this film to theaters. We're not doing, the typical documentary where, we just throw it out on YouTube and all the things like that. Paula is a Hollywood person. Paula knows a lot of people and wants to get this in front of, a really large audience. So I've been working with her since 2019 on this. Good Lord, what's going on in the other room? It's dinner time. I'm actually skipping dinner right now as we speak to blow up for you people. Why? Because our lives are on the line for it, and that's why. Over on Substack.com, or ClimateViewer.substack.com, I just posted this earlier today. Depopulation deals in geoengineering governance. Spraying sunlight, blocking chemicals will kill people, but technocrats push for United Nations oversight to approve global deployment programs despite the potential of starting World War III. And then I mentioned that it's going to kill people. So, I've been talking about this for a long time. The fix is in, and I'm not talking about fixing global warming. Despite numerous attempts to downplay the dangers of solar geoengineering, scientists are already running numerous open-air experiments and calling for a legal framework to pave the way for a global deployment program. Despite the warning signs, so far all attempts at global governance of geoengineering have failed. So that pretty much sums up where we are with geoengineering. All the way back in 2010, there was this thing called the Solar Radiation Management Governance Initiative, or SRMGI. They've renamed it since. But even back then, they were trying to come up with a global governance mechanism to, regulate geoengineering. But the latest attempts, the last time that they tried this, Saudi Arabia and the United States were like, hell no to the United Nations governing geoengineering. So we're still stuck in this gray area where there are no laws to regulate it, to stop it from happening, or, put some kind of guardrails on experiments that are done to block sunlight. And I think that the obvious reason why is because, in a world full of people who all want control, who are megalomaniac politicians, they don't want to give that power to somebody else. And the question of the day, and I'm asking this to everybody watching this video, please leave a comment. Let me know what your answer is. Who would you trust with the thermostat of the planet? Like, would it be a family member? I mean, is there anybody outside of your family, even yourself? Let me know. Because for me, there is nobody, including myself, that I would trust with the thermostat of the planet. We already have a lobbying problem as it is. God, that's a great answer, Stella. Stella Q. She's awesome. Australian accent. Gotta love it. But yeah, God, that's a good one. That's a pretty good one. Let God control nature and the weather, not man. Man is not ready for such an incredible responsibility. So I kind of lay it out like this, and I don't know how big I can make it pretty darn big. This is from a presentation I gave a while ago that you guys might not have seen. But the 4-step process kind of goes like this. Accidental geoengineering. Just claim that everything going on today, whether it's the plane farts and the cirrus clouds or the sky turning milky white, call all of ship tracks, call all that accidental geoengineering. Okay? It's just a pretty accident. Begin geoengineering, climate engineering, or climate intervention using pollution sources that create clouds. Call it an accident. Step 2, geoengineering governance. Write laws to exempt technocrat scientists from legal liability. Now, they haven't even got there. That's the problem. They've already gone on to step 3, which is field experiments. Begin testing geoengineering technology. Engage public response. And I give an example of that right here. Numerous open air experiments. And you can see that on ETC Group's geoengineering page. But if you get rid of, everything except for, let's go ahead and turn all these off. Can I just turn all off, filter all? Yeah, Let's just get rid of greenhouse gas emission, all that. Yeah. And what we're left with is these are geoengineering programs that are going on today. So this is Make Sunsets. Up here is a marine cloud brightening project. And you can go through all of these different projects. There's the Great Barrier Reef Restoration Project, which is going on off the coast of Australia. Another marine cloud brightening slash, there's saltwater ship tracks. Let's just put it that way. But Southern Cross University down there doing that. And so there are many different geoengineering field experiments going on right now. They're all the yellow dots. And you can see there's a whole bunch over here as well. But, like I said, it's happening already. They're not even hiding it. So last up, legal global deployment. Gain control of Earth's thermostat and alter rainfall patterns worldwide. Own the weather. Now, why am I saying own the weather? Because in this PowerPoint presentation I did, which is right here, it's called the Climate Changers and Technocracy and Water Wars. Technocracy, Geoengineering, and Replacing the Water Cycle. I want to flip through this real quick. It's obviously it's linked in enter full screen. Bitch! Do what I say. Crash course real quick. So what is technocracy? Because I keep saying it. Technocracy is a movement started in the 1930s by engineers, scientists, and technicians that proposed replacement of capitalism with an energy-based economy. George Orwell believed that technocracy would result in a scientific dictatorship. Technocrats seek to control all facets of global life through policies and technological methods. These are the enemy of the people. These are the people behind global warming, the hoax. These are the people behind geoengineering. These are the people behind carbon taxes, digital central bank currencies. All of these things can be traced back to technocracy, which started in the 1930s. If the word is smart is in it, it can be traced back to technocracy. So you got to know thy enemy. And these are they. So what are they trying to do? What does this have to do with geoengineering? Well, why don't you ruin the ocean, kill the trees, kill bacteria, create artificial clouds, and end up with geoengineering? Because that would control global distribution of water. And to be clear, technocrats seek to control all resources. So that's food resources, land resources, water resources, and the most important of all, human resources. That's what technocrats do. So why would they try, how are they trying to hijack the water cycle? And how is this going to kill people? Well, by destroying the actual water cycle and replacing it with a scientifically controlled one, that's how we end up this way. So destroy the ocean. Like plastics, like Fukushima, like ship tracks. Good way to destroy the ocean. Kind of important because, we've got these specific, like the gyres of, monstrous proportion of these plastics, floating in the ocean. IPCC. No comment. I don't like those people. But anyway, there's this thing called the claw process, and basically ocean phytoplankton don't just create most of the oxygen that we breathe on the planet. They actually can regulate the entire temperature of the planet through a natural process. So as the globe warms, warmer temperatures and less clouds lead to phytoplankton growth, which means increased dimethyl sulfide cloud seeds. So basically, phytoplankton make cloud farts. Believe it or not, DMS or dimethyl sulfide is
nature's way, one of nature's, I'm going to go through a bunch right quick, one of nature's ways of creating clouds. So phytoplankton fart out dimethyl sulfide, which makes clouds. Interesting. So why does this control so how are ocean phytoplankton geoengineering the planet? How do they control the temperature of the globe? Well, they do it through a natural process. When they fart, they make more clouds. Increased cloud cover reflects sunlight back to space and leads to cooling. After the Earth starts to cool back down, cooler temperatures lower phytoplankton, results in less DMS, cloud seeds, and less clouds, which then lets more sunlight in. Fewer clouds mean more sunlight reaches the surface of the Earth, temperature rise, and phytoplankton begin to grow rapidly. And the cycle returns, over and over again. This coincides with solar cycles, and this is how a beautiful way that our self-regulating system, which you currently live on, takes care of itself. Destroy the forest. So deforestation is a big problem. Jasper Kirby from CERN actually did something called the Cosmics Leaving Outdoor Droplets Cloud Experiment, in which he determined that basically clouds created seeds, and these seeds actually made clouds that made rain. It's almost like they could control their own, environment. And he said, some scientists have warned that measures such as scrubbing sulfur dioxide from coal plant emissions could remove some of the beneficial cooling effect of clouds and boost global warming, but this may now be less of a concern because trees can seed clouds too. What it means is we don't have to fear clean air. And you can look this up. Look up, less pollution is bad for the climate. Because people have actually said this crazy stuff, and it was based on a belief that pre-industrial times were more cloudy and that sulfur dioxide, and sulfuric acid led to cloud formation. So this actually turned all that upside down. Of course, I said all this in 2015 when I spoke at the EPA, but he said this in 2017, and he's got a degree and works at CERN. I don't. And I love this part. It is also interesting to speculate whether trees emit these compounds in part because there's a benefit to them making their own climate, Jasper Kirby says. This really does touch on the Gaia hypothesis, he says, referring to the theory that Earth's life behaves as a single organism that tends to preserve itself. It's a beautiful mechanism for trees to control their environment. I agree. So, fixing the Dust Bowl, what did we do? Back then, this was climate change in the 1930s. We planted 220 million trees during the Dust Bowl, and it was called the Great Plains Shelter Belt. And planting those 220 million trees cut down on ground-based erosion, cut down on winds at ground level. That was climate change, the worst kind of climate change. The bread basket of America turned into a desert. I would call that climate change, because they have this thing called if you look it up, it's called the Köppen climate classification system, and it classifies every place on the planet as its individual climate. Like, what is the climate of this area? Is it like high altitude desert or whatever? This was for sure climate change 1.0. This is never talked about by the IPCC or anybody. And what did we do to solve it? We planted 220 million trees. I say plant trees. Destroy bacteria. Another big component of the natural ice cloud cycle is Pseudomonas syringae, a cloud-seeding bacteria. So, of course, somebody actually created something called Frostband, or ice minus Pseudomonas, which was trademarked as Frostband. And they started spraying this on crops to kill the bacteria that also make clouds. So there was another, that's Pseudomonas syringae right there on the side. Recent discoveries show that rain-making bacteria are more efficient at forming these nuclei than inert particles due to the larger size and surface area of the bacteria. Ski resorts exploit this property by using attenuated bacteria for seeding of artificial snow. So yeah, bacteria, but killing bacteria also kills the natural rain process. So ship tracks and contrails, they call it accidental geoengineering. When the International Maritime Organization banned bunker fuel, MIT Technology Review got really butthurt and said, we're about to kill a massive accidental experiment in reducing global warming. When Chuck Long from NOAA said that planes were making an ice haze that was brightening the sky when there were no clouds present, he said airplane contrails may be creating accidental geoengineering. So this is where I get that, where the accidental comes from. This is their term for it. But these accidental clouds, these are what ship tracks look like, made from bunker fuel. Were actually encouraged by the Arctic Methane Emergency Group in 2012 when they wrote a letter to world leaders saying we should geoengineer the planet. They said, for example, the regulation to ban bunker fuel for ships should be relaxed while encouraging the continued use of bunker fuel where the resulting aerosol emissions might be beneficial. So we like ship tracks. We want more of them. Burn dirtier, stinkier oil, heavy fuel oil, because we want to block out the sun. And these are currently doing that. Arctic Methane Emergency Group, AMEG. They've since deleted their website. You can still find them online. But anyway, we'd like more clouds by day and none by night, and cirrus clouds thinning and all that stuff. I've showed you guys all this before. 10 technologies to control the weather. But anyway, the history of weather control, from pluviculture to cloud seeding to weather warfare to geoengineering, it just keeps plowing along. How cloud seeding works. I don't think there's very much else I want to show you guys in here. Weather warfare. All right. Yeah. So we all know about weather warfare and all that stuff. So, and then here's the slide, what they, are planning and how they're planning to do it to hijack the hydrological cycle. And what are the technocrats? They are scientists, universities, global governance, the climate change people, the people who are behind the water wars, and the military industrial complex. Now, all of what you're seeing right now is, done a presentation for the Red Pill Expo in 2018. And I know that was one hell of a digression, but I did it for a purpose, because once you understand that these people, they want to control everything. It's not just about, killing people. Although that is a big part of it, and that's what this entire article is about. They want to control everything. They want to control what you can do, what you can eat, if you get to drink, because so much of the groundwater is polluted with forever chemicals that if they can control where rain falls and it doesn't, then wow, that's a great way to kill a whole lot of people. Am I right? But that's what the results have shown over and over again. I'll explain that as we go through this. So dealing with the losers, dead people. And for those who don't believe what I'm saying is real, this is straight from Pete Irvine over on the Geoengineering group on Google. This is Andrew Lockley and Ken Caldera's forum. So Pete says this: it's likely that solar radiation management geoengineering intervention will create winners and losers. Now, for the longest time, I was stuck on this word losers. The geoengineering is going to create losers. This is from 2010, mind you. I was a member of the group from 2010 through 2013. And I regularly debated these geoengineers. So I was there for this post. will create winners and losers, and some nations may always be against any geoengineering, he says, intervention whatsoever. Blah, blah, blah. Benford, the Arctic. Okay, I guess I should read this. It's kind of important. Gregory Benford raised the issue of reaching an agreement on global scale of how problematic it would be. For example, if the Arctic Council of Nations agreed to initiate a decade-long field trial, there's that word field trial, that means testing out in the open air, a decade-long field trial to cool the Arctic by 1 degree Celsius. How could they deal with complaints from nations who felt this experiment had induced a negative change in their climate, i.e., you screwed with our weather? It's no longer raining here anymore. We're dying. In any given year, there are floods, droughts, heat waves, etc. But during this field trial, a fraction of these events would be attributed, rightfully or wrongly, partially or fully, to the intervention. So he's saying when a flood or a drought or a heat wave or whatever happens and we're geoengineering, somebody's going to come along inevitably and say, you caused that. The questions are, could it be determined if any changes in the climate outside the target area had occurred as a result of the geoengineering during this 10-year trial? How would aggrieved nations or peoples seek reparations for perceived negative impacts, scientifically proven or otherwise? So, if they create winners and losers with geoengineering, and if they recognize this moral hazard all the way back in 2010, why the hell are we still even talking about this? That's always been my question, like my internal dialogue. Well, if you know it's going to kill people, if you know it's going to change rainfall patterns worldwide, and literally there could be, island nations, certainly the southern hemisphere, where it never rains again. Why? Because that's what happens when volcanoes go off. And when they geoengineer, when they put chemicals in the stratosphere, they are mimicking volcanoes. So if you're going to mimic a volcano and geoengineering is going to do what volcanoes do, then guess what? You're going to end up killing people. And as people start to die, they're going to want their pound of flesh. And how do we give them that? That's what geoengineering. So back to the thing. This is the purpose of geoengineering governments: liability exemption and dispute resolution. So if you ever hear the term geoengineering governance, understand that it's literally those two things. Limiting liability, kind of like how they gave the people who made the things you stick in your arm to make the cough go away, exemption from liability. They want the same thing for geoengineering. But, as we heard it straight from the horse's mouth, David Keith, yes, geoengineering will certainly kill people. He said, this is really the most important thing. You might end up killing many tens of thousands of people a year as a direct result of the decision to geoengineer. And, you can just click that and hit play. And I've got it right to the part. And it'll pop up there. And
this is a really important moral point. So if I made a decision, or if there was a collective decision to do a geoengineering program, and you put, say, the kind of program I think makes more sense to put about 1 million tons a year in, but let's say, you might end up killing many tens of thousands of people a year as a direct result of that decision. I think that has moral consequences. I don't sweep it under the rug. So this is a case where I take this much differently from Alan and think it's a much more serious issue. Now, it's true that as part of doing that...
Interesting point. That's Alan Robach. Going to talk about him in a second. So David Key says, I take this differently than Alan Robach, who's sitting right here. Remember that face. He's going to be who we talk about next.
You would hope that the overall benefits of human mortality would be so that you would save many, many more people than that. But the fact that you would save more people than you kill doesn't mean there's no moral impact of making a decision that directly kills people. And I think that we who talk about this have a duty to be clear-eyed about the direct risks involved in doing it.
He literally giggles I mean, the giggle in the middle of it just creeps me out. It's almost like, a little bit of a Dr. Evil kind of giggle. And, the fact that, that it will kill people. I do take it seriously, but I'm laughing right now as I'm telling you I'm taking it seriously. That's concerning, to say the least. So what do? Just like the IPCC, they make these computer models because they want to always predict the future, and they think they can, but they can't even predict the weather 7 days from now accurately. I know I look at my weather forecast here in Sumter, South Carolina all the time, 7 days out, and I literally take screenshots just to see how close they came. They're never ever even right. I mean, they're so wrong. They told me it was going to start raining on Thursday and end raining on Saturday. And by the time, and I'm looking at this on Sunday, and by the time it got to Saturday, they were like, it's going to start raining on Sunday and it's going to rain Monday, and it's only for a little while. This is typical. So, but of course their counter argument is, well, it's much easier to predict long-term changes in the climate than it is localized weather. Okay, fine. Let's say I buy your bullshit. It still doesn't change the fact that once you talk about actually changing the climate, when you're talking about global weather modification, they can't even predict what's going to happen when they cloud seed in a small area. Now let's imagine we're going to cloud seed the whole planet, which is occurring right now. Let's just say we're going to dump, like David Keith just said, 1 million tons of sulfur into the stratosphere per year. It's going to kill many tens of thousands of people. But just for everybody's concern, let's model that in a computer and let's come up with a prediction of what the future looks like if we get to a global deployment, legalized framework where we're, all in on this together. Well, they call this the Geoengineering Modeling Intercomparison Project, or GeoMIP. So if you look at GeoMIP, and I got the GeoMIP website up right here, I put the link to it so you can actually see it. And they say, hey, look, when we're talking about geoengineering, we're talking about radiation management budget. We're not talking about carbon dioxide removal. They don't even, and that's why I don't talk about the CDR. If you want to suck carbon dioxide out of the sky with, fake plastic trees, then go right ahead. That's not going to kill people. But what you're talking about, an umbrella for solar dimming or stratospheric sulfate aerosols or marine cloud brightening or cirrus cloud thinning, that's what they're modeling, okay, at GeoMIP. So why does this matter? Because at GeoMIP, this is what's going to inform policymakers. That's what the whole purpose of this is. So, weather prediction, I already went over that. It's easier to predict the long-term climate. Compound these facts with this: solar geoengineering is global weather modification. Any prediction is useless, laughable, and at worst, a dangerous tool for technocrats to lobby politicians using the good old argument from authority. We are scientists. We have computer model. It says so. Trust us. But from Jack Stilgo's Experiment Earth Responsible Innovation in Geoengineering, this is probably one of the creepiest things I've ever read. One junior GeoMIP scientist explains, this is priceless because you cannot make this stuff up. Choices as a fear of moral hazard scenario. The scientists did not want results to be taken as support for geoengineering, either a realistic, hold on a second, let me close this stuff out. Either a realistic proposition in itself or as an alternative to mitigation. The GeoMIP researchers are more interested in working out the quirks of the models than the implications of the experiments. Researchers ask each other, how well did we do in balancing the Earth's radiation budget? They discuss how many runs of the world were needed to reach equilibrium. They're literally talking about how many times they have to run the climate model where they geoengineered in a computer to get it right. Because the computer keeps coming back going, everybody dies. They're like, start the damn thing over again. You can't make this stuff up. One researcher admitted that their experiment had taken dozens of trial runs to end up at the right place. Tellingly, when asked whether the number of iterations had been reported on the relevant scientific paper, the researcher replied that it was unimportant. So you mean to tell me that you had to run this multiple dozens of times to get to the right place, and then you wrote a scientific paper for a peer-reviewed journal, and when asked, did you tell people that you had to run it like 24 times to get it to finally say the results that you're writing in this paper? The researcher said it was unimportant. These are the kind of lying ass scientists that make up fake stuff that are informing the megalomaniac politician co-technocrats that are going to decide about, whether this becomes legal or not. It's really scary. So this is the part that's creepy. There's a black comedy to the GeoMIP meetings. The laughter partly relates to the minutia of organizing a new collective area and herding different scientists towards agreement on standards, criteria, and modeling scenarios. There are inside jokes about getting the models to do their job. Every time, quote, every time you touch it, it goes bang and doesn't work. And then they talk about their models, quote, having a life of their own. The same models are described as behaving differently depending on the particular computer server on which they're spun up. There is a playful aspect to some of the GeoMIP experiments. They are intentionally unreal. But there's also occasional nervous laughter that comes with the recognition they are running experiments that at times resemble 20th century war games. This is the line of the century right here, baby. One scientist asked, part jokingly, whether it might make sense to invent a new unit, deaths per watts per square meter, as a metric of the impacts of geoengineering. Deaths per watts per square meter. So, how many watts of energy? I think it's like 344 watts per square meter of solar energy coming in. So how many watts per square meter are we going to block, and how many people die per square meter per watt that you're going to block? My God, these people are sick. So that Alan Robach that I was just telling you about, Alan's come a long way now from just, generally studying geoengineering to being very, very realistic about how dangerous geoengineering is. And he wrote this, and I remember, little backstory. So I told Ken Caldera, I was like, that the crap that you guys are designing can be used by the military to kill people. And he said, there is no possibility in any way that geoengineering could ever be used by the military to kill people. What are you talking about, Jim? You got your tinfoil hat on. Until Alan Robach said it. Military use of geoengineering. Dr. Alan Robach's presentation to the American Meteorological Society gave us 27 reasons that geoengineering is a bad idea. Besides the fact that it's going to kill a whole lot of people, drought in Africa and Asia, perturb ecology and with more diffuse radiation, ozone depletion, continued ocean acidification, may not stop ice sheets from melting, impacts on tropospheric chemistry. Oh, by the way, you're going to breathe that shit? You think that's air you're breathing? No. Rapid warming, if stopped, that's called the rebound effect. That could be bad. So, by the way, it's also geoengineering is like heroin for the planet. Because once you start doing it, if you stop, the planet is going to, go through a rapid detox, and it's going to produce some pretty crazy weather. They know this too. So that's what they're talking about here. Anyway, I thought I could pop that picture up, make it bigger, but whatever. Human impacts, less solar electricity. Yes, if you block out the sun, that means your solar panels will generate less energy. Degrade passive solar heating. Effects on airplanes flying in the stratosphere. You mean all those chemicals can melt the internal parts of the engines and lead to more atmospheric aluminum? Something called the Wegener effect that has to do with ionization and the degradation of metals inside engines, which also puts a whole lot of metals into the atmosphere. Effects on electrical properties of the atmosphere. You mean you're going to screw with the electricity in the atmosphere too? That could be bad. I don't like really big lightning bolts that end up killing people. Affects satellite remote sensing, degrade terrestrial optical astronomy. Hey, you ever want to see the stars again? I want my children to see the stars, so let's not have that. More sunburn, because guess what? UVB and UVC is going to get through because back to that whole screwing with ozone depletion. Environmental impact of implementation, whiter skies. This is already happening. If you have not seen this, you are not looking at the sky. Affect stargazing. Mentioned it already. Human error during implementation. This is under the unknown section. These are the kind, like what kind of cocky bastard do you have to be to go, I can control the temperature of the planet in the first place? And he's already listed, right now we're on number 17 of the reasons why it's a bad idea. But then there's the unknown. Human error when you're doing it, we screwed up. Unexpected consequences, or the unknown unknowns. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and sometimes you don't know what you should have thought that you don't know. Governance, cannot stop effects quickly. Withdrawal, talked about it. Commercial control. Oh no, companies might want to get in on this. Could you imagine a corporate battle like the Pepsi versus Coke, except for there are companies out there that want to battle over who gets to control the thermostat of the planet? Oh, that's number 22. Whose hands on the thermostat? Who do you trust? I don't trust anybody. Societal disruption, conflict between countries. This is what Seth Baum actually wrote a paper, and it was called the double catastrophe theory. And this is what they're talking about here. That, if you started a global geoengineering project on the scale that David Keith is talking about, that say we have World War III, say, we get knocked out by a solar flare or something, and you can't keep doing it. That could really screw things up. So conflict between countries, societal disruption, conflicts with current treaties. You mean like the Environmental Modification Convention? Yeah, I cover that later on in the article. Moral hazard. The prospect of it working could reduce the drive for mitigation. Ethics. Military use of the technology. And then moral authority. Do we have the right to do this? No, you don't. And the interesting part about this is, back in 2008, Alan Robach had written a paper called 20 Reasons Why Geoengineering Might Be a Bad Idea. Since 2008 to 2018, 10 years later, he's now up to 27 reasons geoengineering might be a bad idea. Oh, by the way, in case you're, in that, climate cult and you want to say, well, this is okay. And all of these that are marked in red can be addressed by GeoMIP and other climate modeling. Possibly. So that's why we were talking about GeoMIP before getting to this. Anyway, he's got 6, benefits of geoengineering. And number 4 is literally beautiful red and yellow sunsets, unexpected benefits, and prospect of implementation could increase drive for mitigation. I want you to focus on that for a second. Prospect of implementation of geoengineering could increase drive for mitigation. That is a threat. That is saying, if you don't fall in line, if you don't stop your cow farts, if you don't stop driving, gasoline powered cars, if people don't start climate mitigation, they stop emitting CO2, they go to that net zero they're talking about by 2050. If you don't, then we're gonna geoengineer. So he put that in the benefit category. So technically he only has like 3 beneficial reasons, and they're all highlighted in red saying they can be addressed by GeoMIP. The other 3, beautiful sunsets. I had beautiful sunsets my whole childhood. I saw one the other day. It was beautiful and pink. It was great. Unexpected benefits, dude. This is weak. Like the fact you even created a benefits category. This paper should just be called "We should ban the shit out of geoengineering because it's gonna kill people and fuck everything up." That's what it should have been called. Come on, Alan. But at least you put a good list together for us. And then, of course, Alan Robach was, all giddy about this until the CIA came calling. And this just goes back to show you, I'm telling you, every single time, if you create a technology, somebody will figure a way to kill people with it. Period. End of sentence. You can take a hammer and you can build a house, or you can crack a skull. And the same is true with cloud seeding. Cloud seeding was invented in 1946. Less than 11 months later, the same people, Bernard Vonnegut, Irving Langmuir, and Vincent Schaefer, and the General Electric labs, along with the U.S. Army and the Navy, they went out and they seeded some clouds, and basically they seeded a tropical storm, which then turned into a hurricane, which then crashed into Georgia and killed people. 11 months after cloud seeding was invented, they were already trying to steer hurricanes. And from 1946 to 1967 through like 72, that's when cloud seeding was used as a weapon of war. So in less than 30 years, from invention to weaponization, the military took cloud seeding and used it as a weapon of war. Not once, but twice, also in Cuba. More on that right here. So Alan Robach got a call, and these are his words, not mine. I got a phone call from 2 men who said they worked as consultants for the CIA, and we'd like to know if some other country was controlling our climate, would we know about it? I told them, after thinking a little bit, we probably would, because if you put enough material in the atmosphere to reflect sunlight, we would be able to detect it and see the equipment that was putting it up there. At the same time, I thought they were probably also interested in it. If we could control somebody else's climate, could they detect it? My God. Look at you over in chat. Just nailed it all. Project Cirrus, Project Storm Fury, Operation Popeye. Bravo, Obsolete Optics. See, people are paying attention. I love that. Man, you get a shout out real quick. Right there. Bravo, sir. Bravo. I'm watching you, chat. I got one eye on the chat and one eye on the center screen, and the other eye, my third eye, is somewhere off in space. Anyway. So, yeah. Asked how he felt about this approach, and how when the approach was made, he said, scared. I learned a lot of things that the CIA had done and haven't followed the rules. And I thought this wasn't how I wanted my tax money spent. I think this research has to be in the open and international, and there isn't any question of it being used for hostile purposes. But the CIA literally just called you. And the CIA has a history of weather warfare, which we just mentioned. The CIA is previously involved in weather warfare by creating floods over Laos and Vietnam, Operation Popeye, creating droughts in Cuba. You can click the links. If you click the links, they're going to take you over here to the weather modification history timeline. At the bottom, you can actually click on the thing. CIA are the weathermen. Another CIA plot, Cuba crops, but the seeding near Cuba was to cause less rain, not more. It was supposed to squeeze rain out of the clouds before they reached the island. You might say we tried to embargo rain clouds. Oh no. So the CIA has a history of this. The fact that rogue geoengineering is undetectable, because the CIA is concerned about that, and that's what they were asking Alan Robach about. Oh, we cannot catch somebody actually doing this. This is problem. We cannot distinguish the difference between man-made and natural clouds is certainly a weapon of plausible deniability. And that is something that is crazy, dangerous. And makes the Environmental Modification Convention's NMOD weather warfare ban useless if you can never catch anyone doing it. That's the whole point.
From having significantly larger proportions of retired people and older people relative to working age citizens. Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly. As promising as it may be, moving forward on SAI would also raise a number of challenges for our government and for the international community. On the technical side, greenhouse gas emission reductions would still have to accompany SAI to address other climate change effects, such as ocean acidification, because SAI alone would not remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. On the geopolitical side, the technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations. Others might seize on SAI's benefits and back away from their commitment to carbon dioxide reductions. And as with other breakthrough technologies, global norms and standards are lacking to guide the deployment and implementation of SAI and other geoengineering initiatives. Now, I could go on and on and on and on about the things that fascinate me, but rather than talk about them, I thought I'd stop here and
I could go on and on and on and on about what a big stiff what this gives me, thinking about the possibility of controlling the entire world. John Brennan, I swear to God, man, all the people at the CIA, you guys freak me out. Like, why do we still have a CIA? Like, my God, look at the Atlantic Council and all the censorship. Like, you can't even talk about, elections because of these people. You know what? I want to mention that real quick. I'm the CIA's got me triggered, so now I got to go here, and I got to recommend something for everybody to watch. In fact, because I'm going to cover this in probably the next big thing I do, because I think it's possibly the most important thing I've ever freaking heard.
The defining fact of the United States is freedom of speech. To the extent this country is actually exceptional, it's because we have the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. We have freedom of conscience. We can say what we really think. There's no hate speech exception to that. Just because you hate what somebody else thinks, you cannot force that person to be quiet, because we're citizens, not slaves. But that right, that foundational right that makes this country what it is, that right from which all other rights flow, is going away at high speed in the face of censorship. Now, modern censorship bears no resemblance to previous censorship regimes in previous countries in previous eras. Our censorship is affected on the basis of fights against disinformation and malinformation. And the key thing to know about these is they're everywhere. And of course, they have no reference at all to whether what you're saying is true or not. In other words, you can say something that is factually accurate and consistent with your own conscience. And in previous versions of America, you had an absolute right to say those things. But because someone doesn't like them, or because they're inconvenient to whatever plan the people in power have, they can be denounced as disinformation, and you could be stripped of your right to express them, either in person or online. In fact, expressing these things can become a criminal act, and is. And it's important to know, by the way, that this is not just the private sector doing this. These efforts are being directed by the U.S. government, which you pay for and at least theoretically own. It's your government. But they're stripping your rights at very high speed. Most people understand this intuitively, but they don't know how it happens. How does censorship happen? What are the mechanics of it? Mike Benz is, we can say with some confidence, the expert in the world on how this happens. Mike Benz had the cyber portfolio at the State Department. He's now executive director of Foundation for Freedom Online. And we're going to have a conversation with him about a very specific kind of censorship. By the way, we can't recommend strongly enough. If you want to know how this happens, Mike Benz, B-E-N-Z, is the man to read. But today we just want to talk about a specific kind of censorship, and that's censorship that emanates from the fabled military-industrial complex, from our defense industry and the foreign policy establishment in Washington. That's significant now because we're on the cusp of a global war, and so you can expect censorship to increase dramatically. And so with that, here is Mike Benz, Executive Director of Foundation for Freedom Online. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. And
so I'm seeing people in chat, you know, Tucker's a plant, Tucker's a shill. I've heard all this shit before. I don't give a damn what your opinion is of Tucker Carlson, period. What Mike Benz says, I've known for well over 20 years. I know this. Like, I'm the only person on the planet to literally map out the entire Five Eyes, most of the Five Eyes spy facilities. And for him to talk about how the CIA, for Mike Benz to be talking about how the CIA and all these ex-CIA heads of the CIA formed this Atlantic Council, which are pressuring with threats from the Department of Homeland Security on behalf of the DHS, threatening Facebook, YouTube, Google, all of the above. And now Elon Musk, they're threatening to, you know, sue him into the ground, take his businesses, all of that, because they don't want you to be able to talk about voting at all. And I'm going to tell you what, they would delete this video right now if I said 3 words. And I know what those 3 words are because I literally just heard them talk about this. This is probably the most important thing, because I can't continue to talk about depopulation and freaking geoengineering because, you know, world wars, right? The military industrial complex. I just talked about the CIA. It's important because if you understand that this is all about the military industrial complex at the end of the day. So in MOD, the weather warfare ban literally bans military or any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques which having widespread, long-lasting, or severe effects as the means of destruction, damage, or injury to any other state party. So solar geoengineering definitely falls in that category. and could be seen as a hostile act if initiated by a single country, business, or individual that could end badly. In fact, Dr. Alan Robach said that if the original actor refused to stop, the consequences could escalate to nuclear war, referring to geoengineering. Presidential candidate Andrew Yang said, China is a likely candidate to initiate geoengineering projects, Yang said, because they have the money, resources, and public health stake in the problem. He added that the U.S. lets China start atmospheric modifications first in a rogue manner. He expects the worst. I believe it could lead to war. If 15 years from now, China is launching sulfur clouds into the atmosphere and they float over the ocean and wind up affecting the U.S., that could be taken really negatively, like World War III negatively. And one for the road. When speaking on sunblocking topic, geoengineering researcher Juan Moreno Cruz told Business Insider, the threat of war is never out of the question. If geoengineering is going to happen, all countries would have to be informed and agree because some areas may be more negatively affected than others. More people might die here than there, and that's why everybody, all of the technocrats, need to agree on all of this beforehand, because if too many people start dying over here, somebody might want to start shooting because there was no agreement. And that's really the entire purpose of this article, is to get you to understand the mind of the technocrat in geoengineering governance. What's really going on behind the scenes. This is the plan. Andrea Flossman, a scientist with the WMO, explained in a WMO report, the atmosphere has no walls. What you add may have the desired effect in your vicinity, but by being transported along might have undesired effects elsewhere. So, I mean, at the end of the day, sunlight blocking geoengineering is a lose-lose scenario. Either the chemicals, weather changes, or global war will kill you. This is why I've dedicated my life to warning people of the threat of geoengineering poses and trying to bring an end to solar geoengineering research and deployment. We can adapt to a warming world if that comes to pass. We cannot adapt to being dead. And that's where I stand. I'm not scared of global warming. I'm scared of you bastards who want to block out the sun to save us from the perceived threat of global warming. When your solution is worse than the problem, that's when I say enough's enough. Okay? I already hate weather modification, even though that's all I seem to talk about. It's because I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by these people controlling the weather. I'm even more fascinated by the fact that the only conspiracy theory is that you don't know about it. That people do still to this day. I do, a little straw poll in the gas station, talking to somebody at a restaurant. People look at me like I am freaking crazy when I tell them that there are people trying to control the weather and have for over 100 years. They will never understand how dangerous geoengineering is. And that's why it's important that the small group of people so far who've been kind enough to support me, to follow me, to share my material, that we give the people the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Which is why I brought up that Tucker Carlson thing. Because what the dude's talking about is basically when the CIA is threatening through third parties, through the Department of Homeland Security, the social media platform that I'm broadcasting on right now, and others, when they're all being threatened that if this is a national security concern, that we could find you like $50 million per infraction and take away your Section 230 immunities. They literally are blackmailing the social media companies into, you know, being shills for the government. And I always saw, you know, like Mark Zuckerberg and, you know, Google and Twitter, I always saw them as the bad guy. You know, like I've been proudly shadow banned since 2015. And I always thought it was, you know, it was those bastards that, you know, were the ones who decided to shadow ban me. But then whenever you look a little deeper down the rabbit hole and you realize that it's those same military industrial complex 3-letter agency bastards who are threatening the companies that are censoring me and you and anybody else who tries to talk about these topics. This all ends with a whisper if we can't speak up and say something about it. So if we're going to ever stop geoengineering, we certainly need our free speech and freedom of reach. That's why I bring this up. I don't want geoengineering. I don't want people to die. I hate the idea of depopulation via geoengineering. And I feel like it's almost inevitable. And that makes me lose hope many, many times. And then I pick myself back up and I say, you know what? Get your ass back to work. Because the only thing necessary for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. So despite all odds, I will be here repeatedly shouting from the rooftops and telling the inside story of the crazy technocrats and the geoengineers that want to control every damn thing on the planet. Oh, and by the way, it's going to kill people. Not many tens of thousands. They're looking probably closer to billions. So now you know, and knowing is half the battle, and with information comes power, and with power comes great responsibility. So please use the information I provided today to attack ideas, not people. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my Substack. Please support me if you can. I greatly appreciate everybody that has so far. Love you, and I mean it. Catch you on the next one.
Video resonates with you, leave me a comment because I love hearing from y'all. First time here, be sure to subscribe and click the bell. Yeah! Remember, it would be impossible for me to do this without your support, so please join my Patreon or buy me a coffee on PayPal. And always, attack ideas, not people.